10 children became a perfect soul, pure devotee, and he wrote 100 books. Try writing a book.
Yes, a page.
Yeah. And one of those books he wrote was Gitavali. It's a collection of songs in Bengali and describing so many things, glories of Krishna. And one of those songs is what we're singing. Really simple. It's just 4 lines, 2 words for each line, really simple. And it's names of Krishna in his pastimes in Vrindavan. Yasoda Nandana, etc. Jai Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari, Yamuna Tira, and so forth. So the teaching is there are names of God that indicate his post, Paramatma, Yogeshwara, Parabrahman. He's this all-powerful, almighty, supreme. That's the post. And then there's primary names, that's the Lord in his relationships with his loving devotees. And the teaching says, the primary names have potencies to deliver one from birth and death. They can grant liberation. And the primary names awaken the higher sentiments of love. Prema. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. You got it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dadi Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dadi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dadi Girivara Dadi Yasodanandana Brajajanarandana Yasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari. Krishna. So we're discussing Krishna's pastimes in childhood, chapter 11 of Canto 10. And right now he's 3 years, 4 months old. We know that because that's the time when Krishna wanted to go to Vrindavan, because up until that time he's been in Gokul. Right after his birth, that same evening, midnight, he requested his father, Vasudeva, to transfer him to the other side of the river Jamuna, so he would be away from Kamsa. There's an interesting, later in Canto 3, not later, but earlier in Canto 3, Uddhava, you know who is Uddhava, right? Uddhava? Uddhava, Arjuna was Krishna's cousin. Uddhava was also Krishna's cousin. Krishna's father was Vasudeva, and Arjuna's mother was Kunti, and Kunti and Vasudeva were brother and sister. So Arjuna was their first cousins. But Vasudeva also had a brother, and his brother was named Devabhaga, and Devabhaga had a son named Uddhava. So they were cousins. And Uddhava was, from the time Krishna went to Mathura to the entire time that he was in Dwarka, Uddhava was his constant companion. Arjuna is appreciated because he was such a dear friend of Krishna. But he wasn't always with Krishna. Uddhava was always with Krishna. And he was very learned and wise. So Krishna had a relationship with him like a minister. He consulted Uddhava when he had a tough decision to make. And then he would do whatever Uddhava said. I mean, it was rasa. It wasn't like he's dependent, but it was that kind of loving exchange. There's this nice passage. Krishna had gone to Matra to kill Kamsa. And he, whilst in Matra, just a short time, because he told his father, you can go back now. I have to spend some time with the relatives over here, but I'll be back soon. Tell everybody in Braja I'll be back soon. And he didn't come back. And he didn't come back because he was thinking, if I go back, those who are enemies, the demoniac kings who are still on the earth, they want revenge for my killing Kamsa. If I go back to Braja, they'll harass the Brajbasis. So I can't go back right now. I have to take care of the demoniac kings. So as he was thinking what to do, because I know he is in the hearts of the gopis and the residents of Braja, what to do to pacify them. at that moment, Uddhava came. Uddhava ji, you're the perfect one. I want you to go, I'm going to write a letter to the gopis, dear gopis, deliver the letter, and go meet my Nanda and Yasoda and the other residents of Braja, spend a whole month there, and, make them feel good. Because he was going to do some ministerial work. He's outside of Vrindavan. He's the dearmost associate of Krishna. That's a big honor. Very special. And so I was giving some information about Uddhava, but let's see if so back to, according to Uddhava, in Canto 3, Krishna had left, his pastimes had concluded. He concluded, just before concluding his pastimes, he spoke Uddhava Gita. You familiar with that? Uddhava Gita, like Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna spoke to Arjuna, so Krishna spoke to Uddhava. Very special devotees of his. And after Krishna finished, Uddhava knew, he knew perfectly well, Krishna is going to leave. So Krishna, in order to help permit Uddhava to maintain his life after his departure, he gave him some service. Because service can pull you through, even when it's tough times. So the service was, go to Badrinath, where the devotees of Narayan Rishi are living. I appeared in this world to give my association, but I didn't make it there. So you go on my behalf, and you share with them all the teachings I've given you. You're the message carrier. It's your service. So he was on his way, heading for Badrinath from Dwarka. And he had stopped in Vrindavan, and when he had stopped in Vrindavan, he was in a forest in Vrindavan. And who would come to a forest in Vrindavan but Vidura? Vidura left the royal palace in Hastinapur just because of disgust with Duryodhana, so he didn't have to take part in the battle. He went on pilgrimage for 34 years. It's a long pilgrimage. And one of the last stops was in Vrindavan. And he was in a forest in Vrindavan. There he saw Uddhava. Uddhava! Wow! In a forest in Vrindavan, no less. And then he asked him so many questions, because you see Uddhava, you think of Krishna. He even looked like Krishna. He was sometimes mistaken for Krishna. When he went from Mathura to Vrindavan with Krishna's message, when the gopis saw him from a distance, they thought, Krishna came back! And they got closer, oh, it's not Krishna. His complexion, everything, looked like Krishna. So, he asked him many questions about Krishna, but Krishna, he knew Krishna had already departed. And so Uddhava went into this swoon of meditation upon Krishna. The Bhagavatam says, although his body was there, he went to Krishna. His eyes were half open, half closed, and he was in samadhi with Krishna. Because Uncle Vidura, because he was the age like uncle, he struggled to come back to external consciousness and to speak about Krishna, to satisfy Uncle Akrura in his desire to hear about Krishna. That was Uddhava. So then when he spoke about how long Krishna had stayed in Vrindavan. He stayed in he stayed in Gokula for 3 years, 4 months. Uddhava verified, because he knew the details. And so we're reading from a section where there's the shift from Gokul, which is on the eastern side of the river Jamuna, because Mathura is on the western side, and Gokul is on the east, because they had to cross the Jamuna to take him to Gokul. So the whole Nanda, the whole cowherd community shifted back towards Vrindavan. And there's like a reason why. They're looking at all the disturbances and demons and this and that's, and the falling over of 2 Arjuna trees, and the Lord protected the boys, but there's so many difficulties, we should go to another place. And then they consider, it's Upananda, the elder brother of Nanda, who is considering, kind of like the village elder giving his counsel. And they all agree. So they shift to Vrindavan. And we're going to hear some more about Vrindavan, its size, from the shore, the western shore of the Jamuna, all the way to beyond Govardhan. It's 5 yojanas, or 40 miles. North. So we're going to hear some dimensions, and it's good for the boys. The children, especially Krishna, but the children, and it's good for the cows because there's lush grasses in Vrindavan, and here in Gokul, the cows for 3 years, 4 months they've been trampling and eating, and so it's not ideal for the cows. Let's go to Vrindavan, and so forth, and there's no wild animals, and it's like you get Vrinda is there. Vrinda is presiding over Vrindavan. So we've been hearing this move, and then they actually move. So that's what we're going to be hearing. And there's a little detail. The term Vrindavan is used in different ways. One is one of the 12 forests, and the other is all the 12 forests, or at least the majority of the 12 forests, 9 of the 12. And it covers a big area. So I'm used to, being a Western-born person, thinking that Vrindavan means, the town or the city of 50,000 people. That's Vrindavan. But the term doesn't just mean, where the Loy Bazaar is. It's, and there's so many temples. It's the whole tract of land. And it's one of the 12 forests. Talavan, Mahavan. So Mahavan is the forest by Gokul. One of the forests where Dhruva went is Madhuvan. It's one of the 12 forests. It's a nice place. Nice place. And Dhruva Tila is there, and so forth. Yeah, would have been. But next year. Next year. So they're going to one of the 12 forests. That's what we're hearing. That's what's happening. So the Nanda Maharaj is the middle brother of 5. The eldest of the 5 brothers is Upananda. And when it came time for their father to pass on the kingship, Upananda said, he should be the king, because I'm Upananda and he's Nanda. He has the qualification. So he was humble in one sense, but very wise in the other sense. And it was just Krishna's pastime. So Nanda became the king, and their ancestral home is west of Vrindavan, in Nandagram or Nandagaon in the local language. It's a hill. You should go. And so they left there before Krishna was born and before Radha were born, because the both parents, the parents of Radharani, Vrishabhanu and Kirtida, they were without a child. They were desiring a daughter. Nanda and Yasoda, the king and his queen, were desiring a child, but no child. They had this and that, yagyas and this and that, and no child. So they decided, let's shift to Mahavan, and maybe something auspicious will happen, and so forth. So that was shift number one. Then Krishna was born. Now 3 years, 4 months later. Upananda says, this is Canto 10, Chapter 11, Text 29. Therefore, let us immediately go today. He's many verses, giving his reasons. There is no need to wait any further. If you agree to my proposal, let us prepare all the bullock carts and put the cows in front of us, and let us go there. And the commentary from our different acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, therefore we should go to Vrindavan if it is pleasing to you. Jiva Goswami's commentary, very short. Therefore, we should go today, since this place has disturbances and the time is auspicious. He emphasizes his point with the negative. Do not delay. Do this if it is agreeable to you. This indicates his humility. And Jiva Goswami writes, according to Harivangsha, this place was south of the Kaliya lake. It was 8 kroshas, or 16 miles long, and 4 kroshas, or 8 miles wide. So Kaliya lake. Have you been to Vrindavan? No? When you go to Vrindavan, one of the places, of course, you'll go to is the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And if you walk out the back side of Krishna Balaram Mandir, it's maybe a 4-minute, maybe a 5-minute walk, is the Kaliya Ghat, really close by the temple. And so, according to Harivangsha, it's just south of that, Vrindavan that's being referred to here, where they went. Now, today's Vrindavan is includes, larger tract of land. Okay, so text 30. Upon hearing this advice from Upananda, the Cowherd Men unanimously agreed. Very nice, they said. Very nice. Thus they sorted out their household affairs, placing their clothing and other paraphernalia on the carts, and immediately started for Vrindavan. Now, can you imagine moving within 24 hours? Doesn't work like that. But, they lived very simply, and they didn't have the complications we have. Vishwanath writes, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, gathering together all the cows, there's a lot of cows too, 900,000 cows, 9 lakhs. That's a lot of cows. Moo. And then there's calves, and there's bulls, but 900,000 cows. Gathering together all the cows and other animals of Raja, and loading their household goods on carts, they departed. Jiva Goswami writes, all their minds were fixed on one point, Krishna. Thus, no one opposed and everyone agreed. Bringing all the cows together, they put all their possessions on the carts. The next text, 31-32, chapter 11. Keeping all the old men, women, children, and household paraphernalia on the bullock carts, and keeping all the cows in front, the cowherd men picked up their bows and arrows with great care and sounded bugles made of horn. O King Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami speaking, in this way, with bugles vibrating all around, the cowherd men, accompanied by their priests, began their journey. And the purport, Srila Prabhupada's writing, in this connection, it is to be noted that although the inhabitants of Gokula were mostly cowherd men and cultivators, Krishi Goraksha, the two of the three occupations for Vaishyas, they knew how to defend themselves from danger and how to give protection to the women, the old men and cows, and the children, as well as the Brahminical Purohits. Purohit. Familiar? The Purohit is a particular class of Brahmana that does rituals. They know the mantras, they know the tantras, they know the procedures, and so they're part of a community, the Brahmanas. But specifically, they know how to do the rituals. So that was an important part of the life of the Brijbasis. Jiva Goswami writes, having described loading the carts, Shukadeva now describes their journey. By calling out to Parikshit, he points out the intensity of prema of the people of Braja. Sanatana Goswami writes, having described loading the cart, Shukadeva describes their journey in 2 verses. They had bows in their hands out of fear of Kamsa. They went with priests, not concerned about their houses, since this was a most pure place. By calling out to Parikshit, he points out that it is a king could not suddenly move like this. And most people, too. Text 33, translation. The cowherd women riding on the bullock carts were dressed very nicely, with excellent garments, and their bodies, especially their breasts, were decorated with fresh kumkum powder. As they rode, they began to chant with great pleasure the pastimes of Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, Yasoda and Rohini, holding their son, sat on one cart, for the 2 sons could not bear separation from each other. Then Jiva Goswami writes, the gopis are described in 2 verses, having mounted a type of cart, the Sanskrit in the verse is ratha, ornamented with nishkas, that's golden necklaces that have a locket at the bottom, around their necks, and other ornaments also. Sanatana Goswami writes, the gopis are described in 2 verses. They mounted a type of cart, ratha, or in order to sing loudly and display beauty, they rode in a special vehicle which was higher and broader than the other carts. These women were not old. All the women who rode on the carts were ever youthful. They sang about the pastimes of Krishna, who attracts all hearts. The nishkas, this chain with a golden locket, were their chief ornament, so only that ornament is mentioned. Text 34. Thus, hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great pleasure, Mother Yasoda and Rohini, Devi, so as to not be separated from Krishna and Balaram for even a moment, got up with them on one bullock cart. In this situation, they all looked very beautiful. And Prabhupada's purport, it appears that Mother Yasoda and Rohini could not be separated from Krishna and Balaram even for a moment. They used to pass their time either by taking care of Krishna and Balaram or by chanting about their pastimes. So we're chanting about pastimes, and we're not there yet. warm-up. Thus, Mother Yasoda and Rohini looked very beautiful. Purport. Jiva Goswami writes, they were eager to hear the talk of Nanda, or they were eager to hear the two boys talk. Sanatana Goswami writes, Tata is an ornament of speech which indicates, quote, among all that was described, Yasoda and Rohini were also decorated with nishkaz, etc. They were on the cart with Krishna and Balaram because they wanted to hear stories from Krishna and Balaram. So we're going to hear the conversation shortly. Out of affection, neither of the two boys could give up the other. The mothers, in eagerness to hear the two boys speak, did not distinguish between them. They were eager to hear the two speak to each other. Krishna is mentioned first in reference to Yasoda, and Balaram to Rohini. They were soon to hear Krishna speak with great sweetness. And now comes a long section, and we'll end with this. There's amongst the followers of Lord Chaitanya, the foremost, Lord Chaitanya, we know who is, okay. Amongst the followers of Lord Chaitanya, the six Goswamis were foremost. They lived in Vrindavan. They were instructed, several of them were directly instructed by Lord Chaitanya in the science of bhakti, and they were told to write books. And one of them, one of the six, is the nephew of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami named Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami was also very, very prolific. He wrote 3 different commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. And the most celebrated one was topic by topic. One of the commentaries was verse by verse, like Prabhupada did. Another was going more deeply into the 10th canto. Krama Sandarbha is the long one. Anyway, and then the third was the Sandarbhas, which is the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6 parts. Sat Sandarbhas. Then another book, which we're going to be reading from, is called Gopal Champu. Just like a Sandarbha is a particular type of literature, so Champu is a particular type of literature, and it's sung, and it's done. Yes, there's some rules. He wrote a book on how you write a Champu, and then he wrote one. And it's all about Krishna, Gopal Champu. And it's about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. We're going to read from that. And it's really sweet. This is they're contemplating shifting from Gokul over to Vrindavan. The Cowherd Men met in the assembly of Nanda, the shelter of all present, within the cowherd village of Braja filled with cows. They discussed why protecting the cows was not being properly done in that place. By living a long time in Bhavam, all the trees had been destroyed. But those who were elder in years and wisdom, as well as Upananda, endowed with Prema for Balaram and Krishna, attained great bliss in Krishna's presence. Krishna decorated the bed of their laps. They were sitting, and he came and sat on their lap. He's a 3-year-old boy. You know, picture in your mind. They're having a meeting, and he just toddles in and sits in their laps, and they're very happy. Krishna decorated the bed of their laps most wonderfully, and, holding his chin, asked fake questions. He moved about to get various objects as toys. Upananda then spoke nicely and was in favor of protecting all the children after seeing the worrisome state of Nanda while living in Mahavan. He spoke, "Though you all say that we should not stay here in the interest of cowherding, I say we should not stay here in the interest of the young children. Though Nanda's son is being protected with great care, since many accidents have occurred, what other reason do we need for leaving here? When misfortunes occur, we are protected by the Supreme Lord, but it is not proper to make the Lord act on our behalf." He asked this question. If Krishna is going to protect, if the idea is Krishna is my protector, just you can be anywhere and you're going to be protected. But we don't want to give Krishna extra trouble to protect us. So we make prudent decisions about things. That was his he's happy. A person who is moving considers both the place being given up and the place being accepted. This is a Niti Shastra rule. Before you go to a place, you consider the pros and cons of everything carefully. It needs to be superior, in the pan scale of things. So, a person who is moving considers both the place being given up and the place being accepted. He gives up the place which gives grief and accepts the place which gives happiness. That place is unsuitable, which gives sorrow in this life and the next. Mahavan is now giving us sorrow on a daily basis. One should take shelter of that place, which gives happiness in this life and the next. The forest of Vrindavan gives the highest happiness and is most pure. In Vrindavan, there is the mountain called Govardhan. It provides everything for the cows and the cowherds. The cowherds pay their taxes to the forest since they are not restricted like towns. In going from one forest to another, the king's permission is already granted. One must consider which activities will give happiness or fear. One must act quickly, for if one delays, there will be increased fear. We should leave this place without being lethargic. Whatever effort is put into an action produces a quick result. If my reasoning is pleasing to you, that is good. And if there is an agreement on an object being investigated, it will produce great benefit. If you agree to this proposal, have the cows give milk to their calves to the full satisfaction and set them off to Vrindavan the next morning. Then household utensils should be packed up, and the carts with tent covers should be engaged, for in going to another place such tents are well known among the cowherds. Without argument, the cowherds accepted his words. When seeds are sown on proper soil, they sprout and bear fruit, and not otherwise. With the rumbling of drums, they all called out, "Let us inform Purnamasi. Send her first, and then move the village." Who's Purnamasi? Yogamaya. Purnamasi, before Krishna was born, Purnamasi came to Vrindavan. And she had with her the son of Sandipani Muni. His name was Madhumangal. Little Brahmin boy that became part of Krishna's entourage. His friends were all Vaishya family sons, and one amongst them was a Brahmin boy, Madhumangal. But Purnamasi is Yogamaya, personified. So before they did anything, they consulted her. She was like the guru amongst all the residents of Braja. If she said yes, it was yes. If she said no, it was no. It was like that. They didn't just like, what do you think, and then do what they want. They followed what Purnamasi said. So Purnamasi liked the idea. Let's go to Braj. Let's go to Vrindavan. So they went. The sound, Ghosha, confirmed their name. Ghosha. Ghosha has two meanings. A sound and cowherds. In Mayapur, that's before there was our temples and so forth there. It was just agricultural land, and the family name, like in Gujarat, it's Patel. In Bengal, it's Ghosh. So, in Bengal, it's Ghosh. They're cowherds or agriculturalists. But Ghosh also means sound. I don't know if Patel means that also. When cows and humans make a loud noise, and when they reside together, it is called Ghosha. There arose many indistinct sounds along with the cries of the cows. It gives he, jihi, whatever that means. The rumbling of the carts and the sounds of musical instruments obscured all the other sounds. Placing the elders in the carts, holding bows, the cowherds gravely departed with the walking cows. When all the carts moved together, they made a loud rattling sound. People looking from afar, seeing the carts with tent arrangements, said it looked like a moving village. On the road, some ran, some called, some answered, some went back and then forward, some were taking care of their relatives. All were singing the pastimes of baby Krishna, while shedding tears, becoming stunned, perspiring, developing goosebumps, and changing complexion. The women, wearing new clothing, mounted the carts and began singing with bliss and loud voices. "Oh, son of King Nanda! Oh, son of Yasoda! From birth you have increased bliss. You give bliss to all your relatives. You drank poison, which lost its effect by touching you. By your mercy, you do not accept others' faults." This is the singing part of the champu. "You became blissful on breaking the cart. You are good luck for Gokula. You are pleasurable by having many names. You always play with Balaram. You play in the yard by crawling around. You play together with your friends. You overcame Trinavarta. You gave bliss to Nanda. You take pleasure in releasing the calves. You give happiness and fame to the people of Braja. Your thieving gives joy to all and shows your great courage. You perform pastimes of being tied up and give happiness to all by your nature." While singing and desiring to see Krishna, they proceeded quickly. Then comes a verse from this chapter 11. Thus, hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram, with great pleasure, Mother Yasoda and Rohini, so as to be not separated from Krishna and Balaram for even a moment, got up with them on one bullock cart. In this situation, they all look very beautiful. So that's the cameo in the midst of this singing. On the cart, the two women sat in the house-like cart, shining gold and inlaid with jewels, having soft, clean pillows inside and made brilliant by the effulgence of Krishna. The topics of discussion were of two types: topics concerning Krishna and topics introduced by Krishna. Speaking about Krishna, all the women who went beside the cart pleased the two mothers unlimitedly with known and unknown pastimes of the two boys. Prema took on a most surprising form. All topics filled with Prema were as if unknown previously. Krishna said, "O mother, where is everyone going?" His mother said, "O son, we are going to a forest called Vrindavan." Krishna said, "When will we go home?" His mother said with a smile, "We are taking our house with us." Krishna said, "How can that be explained?" Balaram said, "Oh, Krishna, these big carts, which are like houses, with places lower down for cooking and other chores, are coming with us." Krishna, looking with astonishment, touched Balaram and laughed. He said, "You have spoken the truth, since the trees standing far away are also moving." His mother and Rohini said with a smile, "Oh, son, the trees are not going anywhere, but only appear to be moving." Krishna said enthusiastically, "That is all right, but where is Vrindavan?" Rohini said, "Oh, son, it is across the Yamuna river." Balaram said, "We have left the Yamuna far behind. Is there another Yamuna in front of us?" His mother said, "Oh, son, the river never divides at all." Balaram looked at his mother's face with joy and astonishment. Krishna said, "But you did not consider that the river moves, just like the trees in the distance." When the two mothers laughed in joy, Krishna spoke again with eagerness. "Oh, little mother, with abundant joy, what abundant joy exists in Vrindavan, for which we make such endeavors?" Rohini said, "O son, there are many places for playing and many things to play with." Joyfully ornamenting the lap of Balaram, like a spotless moon with his dark complexion, Krishna, raising himself up with affection for his limbs, raised his head and then looked at Balaram's face, laughing. He joyfully rolled about. The 3-year-old boys. Balaram raised his head and, revealing jubilant pastimes, made Krishna laugh for a long time. They approached a forest, joyful with the touch of the breeze, mixed with the waves of the Yamuna. Listening to the conversations of the two mothers, Krishna stood up and joined Balaram. He talked to the comical elders with no teeth, saying, "What you say is not correct," while seeing known and unknown trees, animals, and birds. Asking about these and receiving answers, they arrived at a pleasant forest on the bank of the Yamuna. The questions and answers. What is that tree with all its leaves quivering? It's a pipala tree. What is that tree with millions of buds? It is an undumbara tree. What is that tree with long locks of hair over there? It is a banyan tree. In this way, on entering the new forest, the mothers and children talked. This marvelous talk gave joy to all people by its showers of sweetness. This is one of his books, Gopal Champu. What are those brown and black animals jumping around? Those are deer. What is that animal which is a mixture of a buffalo and a horse? That is known as a Rohisha deer. Nilgai called in the local language. What are those animals with branch-like horns? Those are Sambara deer. The son of Nanda, along with Balaram, remains glorious as he asks the names of animals from his mother. What is that colored bird? That is a peacock. What is that softly cooing bird? That is a cuckoo. What is the bird talking like a human? That is a parrot. What is that thing going to the flowers? That is a bee. In this way, the two boys talked to their mothers while going to the new forest and laughed. They showered the women of Vraja with waves of bliss. The inhabitants of Vraja then arrived at the bank of the Yamuna, which became crowded with the carts and cows. When they desired to cross the river, they wandered about making sweet sounds as they talked to each other. The two then left their mothers and went to the high cart of their father. Because of its height, with joyful eyes, they saw Vrindavan, giving joy with its wildlife, and they saw the river, beautiful with blue lotuses. Nanda and others began talking among themselves. Oh, that forest across the river from here is most beautiful. It is like a cloth of various colors, whose edge is carried as a reflection by Jamuna. Vrindavan has a wonderful flow of sweetness, like a showering cloud with lightning and a rainbow because of its red, yellow, and white flowers. From far off, it releases a shower of nectar. Its rare fragrance attracts the bees from the heavenly planet. Vrindavan is like a householder welcoming guests, attracting them from afar by its fragrance. The noise created by the various cries of birds, like an attractive mantra whose subject is Krishna, attract living beings which have ears, though they do not know the meaning of the cries. When Krishna and Balaram began to see and hear all of this, the Cowherd Men prepared the cows to cross the river. At the time of crossing the bank, the water of the Jamuna became filled with cows in a moment. When the cows had crossed the river, the cowherds had the women come down from the covered carts along with the furniture and a crafted boat-like bridge, like a highway, using great skill, using kasha, kusha, shara reeds, and bamboo bound together. When the bridge reached from one side to the other, the people who were on one side became the inhabitants of the other side, which was the space between Mathura and Kalia Lake. Singing, laughing, and playing, they entered Vrindavan with the carts. It is said, quoting a later verse from this chapter 11, in this way they entered Vrindavan, where it is always pleasing to live in all seasons. They made a temporary place to inhabit by placing their bullock carts around them in the shape of a half moon. That's a verse from chapter 11. With great enthusiasm and eagerness, Krishna and Balaram jumped down from the cart near the bank of the river, calling their friends with long and short cries. Putting them behind, they entered the pure, colorful forest. Looking left and right, they began walking. How can this be described? On entering the forest, Krishna perceived it, touched it, and made it blissful. Poets, ascribing human attributes, describe that forest as singing to the calls of the cuckoo, dancing by the movements of the creepers and developing goosebumps in its sprouting buds. This is true, since the forest reacted in this way by the touch of Krishna's feet. This will be confirmed later. The two experience bliss and courage by being raised on the shoulders of relatives and being carried around along with their friends. They associated with animals having auspicious marks and went from Vatsa Krida on the bank of the Yamuna to Shatikara. Those are nice places in Vrindavan. With the sound of drums and the order of Nanda, with Shatikara in the west and facing the southeast, they stopped at a level area devoid of trees. Vrindavan, whose qualities are revealed by its names, when occupied by Nanda's group, shone with splendor, as if awakening from sleep. They made a living space for the cows by placing the carts in a half circle, within which they placed the cows, providing them with extensive pasturing space. They made a half circle with the carts at the edges, which served as a living space for the cows. This is Harivamsa being quoted. That day, they made a living space for the cows, it's for the carts. A living space using the carts. Again. The next day, they placed thorny trees, branches which they dug up, and old thorn bushes around the carts. Again, that's Harivamsa. With Govardhan visible from the eastern gate, they built houses near a line of trees. Though they had given up fine houses, the cowherd houses they built now were not inferior to the previous houses. The cowherd village measured 8 kroshas. The cow pastures within it measured 4.5 kroshas. Though this measurement is accepted by materialized, the place was actually inconceivable in its potency. In the middle was Nanda's house. On its sides were his brothers' houses. Around those were many other people's houses. Their houses were arranged according to the amount of their prema. Not the normal way. As previously, they all experienced unprecedented bliss coming there. The two boys, anxious to play, had a very strong desire to see the forest again. Every day, the two wandered about in the forest with their father, herding the cows. Then later in this chapter 11, when Rama and Krishna saw Vrindavan, Govardhan, and the banks of the river Jamuna, they both enjoyed great pleasure. We're almost done. All the banks of the Yamuna, with their natural areas surpassing fields of camphor, Govardhan with piles of rocks suitable for sitting and lying down, and the jeweled earth of Vrindavan with its groves of attractive trees became causes of joy for the two boys. So the person that's narrating Gopal Champu, it's how the text is composed. There are two brothers, and Madhu Kanta is the one that's narrating. So he's just describing all these things to the residents of Vrindavan. Specifically to Nanda. With folded hands he spoke, "O king of cowherds, you have given birth to a son who, though acting as a child, maintains the universe. When Krishna's pastimes were thus broadcast, as on previous days, all experienced unlimited bliss and then returned to their houses." The end. For today, at least. Jiva Goswami is not his renown is not for the type of literature that we just heard. He's renowned for his super elevated philosophical sharpness. And but he had a wide range of skills. It's just something I like. Jiva Goswami was one of my heroes, so I'm in his fan club. Historically, after a great personality, a spiritual personality, a spiritual leader, departs this world, the next two generations are very important, whether what their teachings and their influence will fade quickly or will endure. So it's very, very important, historically speaking, what the next couple generations do. So Lord Chaitanya continued his teachings through the Six Goswamis of Vrindavan. Principally, the elder was Sanatana Goswami and his brother Rupa Goswami, who previously were prime minister and finance minister in the Nawab Hussain Shah's government, meaning like a third of India. They're at the top of the mountain, and they left. So they had that kind of skill, but they left and used that skill in leading the devotional community in Vrindavan, leading exemplary life, living very simply, writing books, and giving their personal association to everyone. So that was the next generation following Lord Chaitanya. But the next generation following them, that was a real test. So it was the nephew, these two, Sanatana and Rupa Goswami, were brothers. And they had a third brother who died when he was young, but his son was Jiva. So Anupam was the third brother. Jiva was their son. And so Jiva Goswami studied under Rupa Goswami. He received everything from Rupa Goswami, and he continued on and lived a long life. And he wrote 400,000 verses. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, here's what 400,000 verses is like. How many verses are there in Mahabharata? 100,000. And how many verses are there in Srimad Bhagavatam? 18,000. How many verses are there in Bhagavad-Gita? 700. So it's like he wrote, 3 Mahabharats, 5 or 6 Srimad Bhagavatam, 6 or 7 Bhagavad-Gitas, and some other books. One man. And he wasn't Vyasadeva. And most of the verses were high philosophy. There's a very nice devotee who was homeschooled from Boise, Idaho. You know his name? Radhika Raman. When he was 13, he got a full scholarship at Oxford University and got his PhD from Oxford University on 3 verses from one of the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. I mean, he spoke about other things. He wrote in research and wrote about other things, but in Jiva Goswami's writings, it's how many PhDs in his makeup. So it's very, very condensed and significant and meaningful and profound, and that's what he's known for. Prabhupada said there's never been a scholar in the history of the world like Jiva Goswami. So, yet he's writing something that's so sweet like this. It's like you're there. And in the style of a champu, sometimes it's short verses where it's sung, sometimes it's long narration, sometimes, and there's rules, and he knows what the rules are, he's following the rules to the purpose is to awaken a mood of prema or vraja prema for Krishna and his associates, to take you there through the Bhagavatam verses sometimes, and otherwise just filling in the detail. And it wasn't like a creative writing spree. It was he had, and others of his time also had the capacity to experience Krishna's pastimes, although to the world they weren't visible. By spiritual capacity, they could experience Krishna's pastimes and then describe them. There's some Sanskrit terminology that he writes about to explain all that. Svarasaki. So here we are in Chicago and remembering Krishna through sound vibration, and it has the power to transport one to that place by sound vibration. Consciousness being transported by sound to remembering and appreciating and relishing Krishna's pastimes. So what to speak of the Brijbasis as they were riding on the carts singing songs about Krishna, they were in ecstasy. They were doing their worldly duties, and they were in ecstasy, in constant remembrance of Krishna. Just as Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad-Gita, Ma manusmara yudhyatya, engage in always thinking of me and perform your prescribed duties. That's our life. Not neglect prescribed duties and not neglect remembering Krishna. There are two things. Perform prescribed duties and always think of me. And one of the best ways to always think of him is through sound, by hearing and then remembering. Who knows, maybe you wake up in the morning thinking of something that we just heard about Krishna's, the sweetness of Krishna's exchanges. He's the personality of Godhead behaving with Nanda and Yasoda and Rohini exactly like a small child, like a silly, prattling child, delighting them like a small child delights mother and father. But it's exchange on the platform of Prema. And we can do the same thing, although we have our worldly duties to do, whatever the stage of life dictates what those duties are. And by the same method, engage in prescribed duties and always think of Krishna. That's our mission. That which we have forgotten to remember and carry out our duties in a proper way, and always remember that which is our eternal nature. And we were at a home yesterday evening where it was, how old was the young person that asked that question? What determines where the soul goes after death? Yeah. So it depends on where the mind goes. That's where you go. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita. Yam vapi Smaran Bhavam jajat Dante Kalevaram ante, at the end of life, whatever the mind is absorbed in, the mind, the subtle body, carries the soul to its next destination. So what are our mind absorbed in? Probably, it depends. Depends on what you're accustomed to hearing during the day. That's what your mind is absorbed in. And it's a turbulent times that we're in. Saw a picture of an 83-year-old lady in the news, and she had a little store. Someone came into the store and was shoplifting. She shot him. And they asked her, "Why'd you do it?" She said, "I've had it." Too much turbulence. I don't know if she killed the guy, but it's turbulent times, and so how to not be swept away by the turbulence of our turbulent times. How to be sane and stable, and what to speak of spiritually progressive. It's so important. The hearing process is so important. And while we're doing, let's say, in youthful times, academics, sometimes academics just takes up so much time and space, there's no time for anything. Then that's what you're going to be filled with, is fruitive activity, passion. And where does that take? Kamesha, Krodesha. Frustration. That's the world. And people then do things out of frustration that are an 83-year-old lady. Simple lady. Yeah.
So what are some ways you would navigate that turbulence as a Krishna devotee?
That's a nice question. That's a nice question. Well, one of the questions on Sunday is how do you cultivate detachment? So one is knowledge. This is all temporary. It's not who I am. It's not who they are. It's the modes of nature doing its thing. Here's the mode of passion. Here's the mode of ignorance. Every now and then you see a little bit of goodness. Like that image of that black man carrying the white man out of a turbulent protest situation in the UK. He didn't want another disaster. So, that it's in the news. Here's a moment of goodness in the midst of... So, it's the knowledge leads to detachment. It's a turbulent times because people are frustrated. And they're frustrated because their passions are unfulfilled. So passion leads to ignorance, and that's what we're seeing. So with knowledge, here's what it is. Now, what can I do about it? So when you're in that knowledge position and there's detachment about what's going on, the mood of service, what can I do? What's the root cause? If you don't see the root cause, you want to do social activism. That's big in amongst young people today, and older people today too. They want change, social activism. That's keep going. Your question is how to deal with turbulence. What's the root cause? It's not just that there's a manifestation that the terminology currently is systemic racism, which is true. And then, before that, it was gun violence, and that's true. So what's the root cause? If you don't address the root cause, just like, when I was before here, I was staying in Naperville, and there's some dandelions that are growing in the front yard. So the guy comes along and mows the lawn, and there goes the dandelions, but the root's still there. So here comes the dandelion. And anybody that, agriculture, you can't just plant a garden. You have to deal with the root, with the weeds. So what's the root problem? So now, how do devotees deal with it? There's turbulence today. What's the root problem? The root problem, if you're a Buddhist, the root problem is desire. If you're a Vaishnav, the root problem is ignorance. Because ignorance leads to ignorant desire. And ignorant desire leads to ignorant activity. And ignorant activity leads to suffering. People are suffering, and they don't like to suffer. The racism is suffering, and the white people that are now incensed all over the world. Now, how long is that going to last? Because the root is ignorance. It's not just unfair dealings, unjust dealings between one group of people and another group of people. It's been going on since time immemorial. One group of people, another group of people. What's the root problem? And if you don't deal with the root, you're going to have the same thing happening again and again, in history repeating it again and again, in different forms and different modes or expressions. So what's the root problem? It's ignorance of... so the starting point for a devotee is know who you are. There's a really nice, if you haven't seen it, find out how to see it. It's the Hare Krishna movie. You've seen it? I watched it 6 times. It's really good. When Prabhupada is sitting there with this reporter saying, what's your message? Prabhupada said, is to know who you are. And the reporter says, to know who you are? Prabhupada says, to know who you are. What's your message? So, that unpack, know who you are, it's a big, it's a mountain. But it's just, to say you're not the body, that's okay, that's a beginning. Because it's ignorance is to think we're somebody that we're not. You think that you're the body, then you think that you're a white body or a black body or an Indian body or this body or that body or a skinny one or fat one or this one or that one, an old one or whatever it is. And then you got groups, and you get people in groups clash. And it's, China and Hong Kong, or China and the U.S., or China and India, or so if you're Chinese, you're supposed to be nationalistic, and they are very strongly. So the root cause is ignorance. Now, what can I, a little tiny speck, do about that? Well, first is to become situated in not just theoretical, but to know who you really are. And to know who you really are includes, a subset of that is to know you're part of something that's much bigger than you. And that's something that's much bigger than you. What's that? The source of everything. And connect with the source. And then, according to your little capacity, you live a life of knowledge. And you extend that knowledge to others. It can take n number of different forms and shapes according to your psychophysical nature, how you do that. But extend knowledge into the world. Some people it's write 100 books. Some people it's sit in the home and have a class and discuss with people that have the kind of ears that want to hear. And then if something goes in, okay, it's a step. It's a step in the direction of knowledge that's the antidote to ignorance. And then, encourage people to live their lives according to that understanding. Although it may be initially theoretical or notional, move it to the position of realized. Jnanam vijnanam astikyam. Brahma karma swabhavajam. To become Vaishnavas, where you live according to the theory that you understand and accept. You extend in various forms and means and methods and strategies and knowledge that's the transcendental knowledge that's the antidote to ignorance. That's the root cause. Do so many things. Be part of a social activist group. But don't skip the root cause. Be concerned with gun violence, but don't skip the root cause. You clip and it's going to come up some other way. The modes of nature are going to act. And if you don't elevate people from the lower modes of nature to a higher nature, it's going to be another manifestation and another manifestation. And it gets darker. It doesn't get lighter. Bring light into that place of darkness. Bring knowledge into the place of ignorance. That's a challenge. So that's what as a devotee, that's what I want to do. And there's different ways of doing it. Some is this and some is that and some other ways. And those that are doing it other ways appreciate the other ways. I don't have to do everything. I'm a little person. and support it. It doesn't mean you become... in Bhagavad-Gita chapter 5, this is one of the answers I gave to this young man for Sunday. Detachment doesn't mean I don't care. Detachment means I'm not swept away with that flow of turmoil. I'm recognizing what it is, and from the position of recognizing what it is, I'm not caught in it, I'm detached from it. Now my intelligence can act more sharply what to do about it. And then you go to, you take practical steps in the real world while you're acting from the position of spiritual consciousness. And we each have our own nature. There's other people that have similar natures and different natures. We work with people that have similar natures to do that which is rooted in spiritual consciousness together, work cooperatively, and respect other people that have another approach that rooted in spiritual consciousness. And collectively, we can make a difference. That's the make a difference motto in the social activism. But it's got to be at the root. Otherwise, it's just more of the same. I'm inspired by your question because I was thinking about this from this young man's question. And during my time in college, it was political activism, not just social activism. It was a group of young people that wanted they had different names. They call it the pigs, or another was something complex, industrial financial complex that rules the world, and they were like revolutionaries against that. And they burned the ROTC building reserve. They took over the it was in this what's it called, with the administration building for the university. They occupied it, and it was violent, and they weren't moving, and they wanted change. And I saw those people, and I said, "You're going to replace those people with those people? No thanks." They were angry, and they had reason to be angry, but their method was not any better than it was crude. They felt, look, we're not getting anywhere by being nice. We're going to be not nice because we're going to make some change. And I said, no thanks. I want another approach. So that's just a kid in college. I wasn't a Hare Krishna devotee at that time. I was just like looking at the scene saying, no thanks. Change, yes, but not that kind. So a quiet revolution, a revolution of consciousness. That's the Bhagavatam. Janata Agha Viplava. You have a Bhagavatam set here? You should get a Bhagavatam set here. It can be arranged, but that's in the introductory pages of every single volume. That's whatever it is, 18 volumes. That there's this reference to this verse that Vyasadeva hears from Narada. Tadvag visargo janata agha viplava. Vag means something you say. Tadvag visarga, the creation. The writing of this literature, Tadvag visarga, janata agha viplava. Janata is people in general. Agha is sin. Viplava means kaboom, explosion, revolution. This literature is meant to be a revolution in the impious lives of people today. That's a quiet revolution. So I like that much better than the other kind. The political activism or the social activism, it gets really violent. And that's no solution. It's more of the same. And I'm sure it'll bring about some temporary social change, and then the mode of ignorance will crop up in some other way, and some other way, and some other way. The root problem hasn't been addressed. Janata agha viplava. No thanks. No. Anything else from the people in the room? Because if not, then we'll go to the online questions. But I'm sure you all been listening very carefully. Give him the microphone. He's got something to say.
I was just reading Navadipa.
Navadvipta Mahatmya?
Yeah, yes. And there are three bhavas, Aswarya bhava,
Yeah.
Madurai bhava,
Yeah.
and
Odarya.
Ajarya bhava. So, what mean by those three guard? Gauru, one is for talk about past time for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Okay. Sure. That's a nice topic.
Yes.
Sometimes Lord Chaitanya or Krishna would show opulence. Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. And, and Lord Chaitanya cured people and, did some. He showed his opulence, his Aishwarya. People went, oh, the Supreme. Right. Sometimes there's sweetness in loving exchanges with his devotees. So that's Madhurya. And sometimes Odarya. Odarya means his mercy. Like the mercy of, for example, Jagai and Madhai. And he was ready with his Sudarshan chakra to chop them. And Lord Nityananda said, no. In this form you came not to kill the demons, but to remove their demoniac mentality. But they hit you in the head. So, please save us. So you get permission from Lord Nityananda for forgiveness. And then promise me you'll never do this again. So they were drunkards and the worst of sinful people. They became very gentle souls. And others and others and others. Other examples of the Odarya or merciful nature. There's many examples. Chankazi, who stopped the chanting. And he showed his mercy to Chankazi. He showed his power, and then he showed his mercy. So those are aspects of love. Love that's inspired by opulence, majesty, oh, supreme, and sweetness, and mercy. Okay, online, or your question.
One practical question, Maharaj. You mentioned that this is regarding consulting Purnamasi.
Yeah.
You mentioned that sometimes people ask like, "What do you think?" And then after getting the consultation, they do whatever they want to do. So I want to ask you, what is the correct way? Should we consult once we are ready to accept what the superior is saying, or accept and then wait, try to do it, which is?
Well, there's different relationships and there's different circumstances also. So, like, let's say you might consult somebody about, I don't know, should I buy this kind of car? And it's it. So, or should I make this kind of a move in my career, or should I buy this kind of a house, or something. You consult in some practical. Like we've had discussions that say, with this teaching of the children in this temple, Radhesham temple. So what about that? And so in that case, it's just there's different relationships, and something. This is me. I don't like making decisions for people like that. There very rarely will I step in and say, turn left instead of right. But it's rather how to make wise decisions, because there's lots of factors, and I don't know all the factors, and the other person also may not know all the factors or not say all the factors. So many factors. Better to help people make wise decisions, because when you're not around, they have to make wise decisions when you're not around. So there's a range of things about consulting on the level of the topic that you're consulting, the kind of person that you're consulting, the relationship with that person that you're consulting. And in some cases, it's just, have you considered this and have you considered that? And in some things, it's not so flexible. So there's a whole range. In our lives, persons who we consult. And then there must be like the gold standard. For let's say in ISKCON, the gold standard is Prabhupada. Now, take that as the gold standard, and there's different ideas of what Prabhupada said. And so over here he said this, and over there he said that. Some people say he said, they don't look at the big picture. So it takes a willingness to hear with an open heart, open mind, and open heart, and try to get the big picture, and have a sense of pleasing Guru and Krishna. And when we consult, that's the mindset that we're carrying. I want to understand what's going to be pleasing to Krishna, what's going to be pleasing to Guru, and then you consult in that mood. In the case of Purnamasi, it's like she's absolute. There's this nice pastime where I'm going to tell Krishna pastime. Do you know how Radharani got the benediction that whatever she cooked, it would never be the same twice, and anybody that ate her food that she cooked would be healthy and live a long life? With Durvasa Muni. Now Radharani doesn't need a benediction from anybody. But one time, Durvasa Muni visited Vrindavan, and he was walking through an agricultural field, and there were some young girls with Radha, and they knew it was Durvasa Muni, and so they went running. They ran away. They ran to him. Durvasa Muni, is there some service we can do for you? And Durvasa Muni said, yes, I'm very hungry. I've been fasting for a long time. I'd like something to eat right now. And they looked at each other and said, well, we'll have to go back to our homes and prepare something, and we can do it really quickly. We'll be back shortly, okay? And he said, you don't understand. I want something right now. And then they got worried. Don't anger Durvasa Muni, could have a big problem. So Radharani started making biscuits with dust from Vrindavan and a little water. And they gave some biscuits to Durvasa Muni. And he said, what? You expect me to eat this? And they said, no, you don't understand. Radharani's really gifted. It'll taste really good. Just try one. So he tried one, and it was delicious. And he said, I give you a benediction. Whatever you cook for the rest of your life, it'll never be the same thing. It'll always be very, very tasteful. And whoever eats your cooking, they'll live a long life and be very healthy. So the gopis went back and told their mothers, wow, you know what happened today? We ran into Durvasa Muni and he gave this benediction to Radharani. And Radharani's mother, Kirtidar, happened to be a very good friend, dear friend of Yasoda. So she told Yasoda what happened. And Yasoda said, oh, can your daughter come and cook for Krishna? See, little girl. So from the time she was a little girl, she would come every morning with her friends and cook for Krishna. So, you know how mothers are. She started became very affectionate to Radharani and started thinking, wouldn't it be nice if Radha and Krishna were married? Wouldn't it be nice? You know how mothers are. So she, in a very joking mood, she made some haldi marks on the back of Radharani's hand, like, you're now engaged. It was fun. It was just a joke, like, humorous. And Radharani was enjoying the relationship with. But as she was going home, she looked at her hand and said, "What are Kirtida and Rishabhanu going to think?" So she went to a pond and washed her hands, and it became yellow with the turmeric. And somebody saw it. So they reported it to Kirtida, even before Radharani got back. And she said, is it true? And, well, it was just fun. But, so then Kirtida and Vrishabhanu really liked the idea too. So they sent a bullock cart filled with jewels and ornaments, just like, an acknowledgement of, yes, we accept. So Yasoda and Nanda were really worried, like, we don't have the kind of wealth that they have. And so besides, Purnamasi hasn't given her okay. We have to ask Purnamasi what she thinks. So they asked Purnamasi, she said, no way. Because the pastimes of Radha and Krishna have to play out differently than they get married. It has to be the other way. So it's not an auspicious time. It can't happen. Then everybody forgot. Because she just said that was it. Because she's Yogamaya. She's orchestrating Krishna's and Radha's pastimes. So back to your question. If you're going to consult Purnamasi, you better just say yes. But in ordinary, there are different gradations of consulting and the gravity of the situation, and so your specific question should be ready to accept before you go and ask, and the answer is depends on what you're asking about, and having such a person in your life who you accept as absolute, you should also know that there's sometimes things that are discretionary and some things that are absolute. Without intelligence, you're kind of lost. You don't really know what to do. You got to have some intelligence. Super soul is the supplier of that. Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Today being Rath Yatra, can you please, enlighten us about something about Rath Yatra? Jagannath or...
Somebody just sent me videos of today's Rath Yatra. in Puri, with the the pandits wearing masks. So I knew it's this year, not a previous one. But bringing him out of the temple, putting him on the cart being pulled, and all that. So, well, this is not a short topic; it's a long topic. But the story of Jagannath appearing is found in Skanda Purana, in the Purushottam Kshetra Kanda, and the form of Lord Jagannath is explained by Narada to King Indradumna that this is a scene in Dwarka, because the mood of Jagannath in Puri is a particular mood of Krishna in Dwarka. So here, Skanda Purana narrates like this. In Dwarka, the residents of Dwarka knew that Krishna has such love for the residents of Vrindavan. They wanted to understand that love. But having not been there and had lived there, they couldn't understand how they would understand. Then they got the idea. Rohini, she lived in Vrindavan, mother of Balaram, Rohini. And so she was now with them in Dwarka. So they asked, Rohini, can you describe Vrindavan to us? What it's like, what it is about that Krishna loves about Vrindavan so much? He said, yes, but if I start narrating about Vrindavan, Krishna will know. And Krishna will come, and then I won't be able to continue. So Subhadra said, I'm the sister. I'll just stand at the door. And if they try to come in, I won't let them in. So that was the deal. So Rohini starts narrating Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Krishna and Balaram, being omniscient, they knew, so they came. And Krishna's over on this side, Subhadra's in the middle, and Balaram's over on that side. And hearing the pastimes of Krishna, they manifested a form with their eyes dilated and a big smile, and their limbs retracted partially within their bodies. And Narada was there in the audience saying, ah! There should be a deity form like this. So when Narada's telling King Indradumna, who's, oh no, I spoiled everything, when the carving was going on, Nilamadhava, he said, no, this is that form. This is Krishna in the mood of ecstasy of separation from the Brijbasis. That's Jagannath. And Balaram and Subhadra in the middle. So when they leave the Jagannath Mandir, they're going to Gundicha. Gundicha represents Vrindavan. Gundicha represents Vrindavan. They're leaving the cart. The first Rath Yatra is from Kurukshetra, where there's the solar eclipse, 10th Canto Bhagavatam, and the residents of Vrindavan want Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. So they build a cart. They want to bring him back to Vrindavan. That's what Rath Yatra is. It's the mood of the residents of Vrindavan wanting to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan from this opulent place, his temple in Puri. Purushottam Jagannath, come to Vrindavan. And then the Hera Panchami festival. You familiar? Hera Panchami festival is something like 3-4 days after he's still in Gundicha, and the goddess of fortune is upset. Lakshmi is angry at Krishna. Come back. So in a haughty mood, she's taken in a diamond-studded palanquin, opulent as anything. It's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And, drums and Brahmins and trumpets and, big spectacle, opulence. Here comes the goddess of fortune. And her marching all the way down Grand Road to Gunjita Temple. They got sticks. The associates of Lakshmi have sticks, and they, play acting. They don't actually hit. The servants of Jagannath, bring him back. It's a big all-day festival. Then she goes back. I'll be there shortly. She goes back to the Jagannath temple. And then the procession, he goes back. It's in the mood of that visit to Kurukshetra, where the residents of Vrindavan wanted Krishna to be again in Vrindavan and not in Dwarka, with all the opulence and this and that. Horses and infantry and soldiers and splendor and majesty and Aishvarya. Aishvarya. We want Madhurya, please.
Online questions. From Uttama Bhakta Prabhu, in one of your quotes, you said Vrindavan is the land of love rather than law. Does it mean law is present as a subset?
Yes.
Or subservient to love?
Yes.
Okay. One more question. Does one have to be really simple internally to accept Krishna in his Vrindavan form, or one will have a hard time?
Yeah. Look, what's the opposite or the absence of simplicity is complexity.
Question from Amara Mataji. In morning class, you mentioned that it is by mercy that we are able to hear these transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. I was thinking, how can we reciprocate to this great mercy? Is it by keeping our heart open and receptive to these pastimes?
And disseminate it to others. Bring light into this place of darkness. Give to others the same message that you have received in your heart. Live it and give it.
Question from Radhika Priya. Krishna spoke Bhagavad-Gita to Arjuna in the battlefield, and also he spoke again to Uddhava in Canto 11 Bhagavatam. Both has the same message?
Yeah. It's 101 and 201. It's graduate study. It's more elevated. It's the same principles explained in further detail. That's it. Anything else? Going once. Going twice. Okay. You were looking at your notes. Did you find something else? Yeah.
I had something from the beginning of your lecture.
Your first question got me going, so I'm ready for the second one.
Well, this one's kind of more along the storyline. I think I missed the motivation of the move from Gokul to
Vrindavan.
Yeah, like the motivation, because if Krishna was so young, and I know you said
Well, the real motivation, the inner secret is Krishna wanted. And everybody else, and everything started to move because he wanted. And he wanted to go to Vrindavan. Now he's the personality of Godhead. There's nothing lacking that he's wanting. So I'm feeling unfulfilled, so I want something. But it's a pastime kind of wanting. So that is to say, there's devotees, there's his associates, there's whatever that's there in Vrindavan. He wants to give his association to them. And so that was the inner reason. Then the external reasons were there's lots of dangers, demons coming, trees falling over and stuff. So we want to protect the children. And second reason is the cows have trampled the grasses and so forth, and it's not it's good for the cows over here as over there. And there's safety. There aren't wild animals. So they did the plus minus thing. So they came up. There's lots of pluses over there. There's lots of minuses over here. So those were the external ostensible reasons for moving. The elders were considering those practical things. And Krishna is playfully sitting in their laps, pulling on his chin, asking fake questions, and it's just inspiring them to do, what he wanted them to do. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Maharaj, one more question. From Sanchari. I have two questions. Okay. Did only the residents of Vrindavan hear Krishna's flute, or did every pure devotee residing on the planet at that time hear it as well? I am thinking of the demigods who were able to see and hear the goings on in Vrindavan.
Well, they're hearing the answer. The verses, the gopis say, not just those who are in the earshot of the sound of Krishna's flute, in that sense hearing, but the vibration carried throughout the universe. Now, what kind of sound carries throughout the universe? That it's a spiritual sound. It's not the audible notes of a flute kind of a sound that can carry only a certain distance. So the gopis say it went, far beyond the audible range. They not using those words, but so it went beyond. Does that answer that?
The second question, were the glories of Krishna's pastimes in Vraja well known outside of the village before he left for Mathura? I am thinking of Rukmini, how she fell in love with Krishna from hearing about his pastimes.
She heard from Narada. Narada was like, he's a sannyasi, but he was doing the matchmaker program. Hey, Krishna, Krishna. Ooh, Krishna, Krishna. Because he knew, he knows past, present, future, and he's doing his role play. Bring Krishna together with Krishna's desire, his beloved, Rukmini. You have something?
No, I was like imitating you said, hey, Krishna, Krishna, ooh, Krishna.
Sound effects. Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.